welcome, Michele. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Hey,
So,
Richard. It's great to be here.
great. Among many things that we have in common, I also am a self-taught artist, and I'd be very interested if you could talk a bit about your background and your journey to becoming an artist.
Wow, I have a really unusual background for an artist. I mean, I started out, I, I was never one of those kind of drawing kids, you know. I, um, Basically, I did a degree in political science, and for my kind of early adulthood, that was my focus. I was really interested in politics. And I ended up studying Russian and living in Russia.
Come
Um,
on, this can't be true. I,
yeah,
I was I was a Soviet affairs expert before I became an artist, and I studied.
really, yeah. I mean, kind of me too. I'm not. I wouldn't call myself an expert necessarily, but that was my field. Yeah, that's so crazy. I didn't know that.
We need to continue this at some other point.
Yes, yes. So anyway, I was working in Russia, and I guess I just got really disaffected, which is the thing that kind of trying to work in Russia will do for you. Um, and I started looking for more of a creative outlet, and basically just started like doing all kinds of things with repeated shapes where I was just like I would even use the computers at work and the copy machines and just make tons of copies of stuff and cut them out and put them up all over my cubicle. So I had all these repeated themes and images, and that's kind of carried through in my work all these years. It's just that use of repetition. um, so I kind of have no idea where it came from, but anyway, after that point, there were a whole bunch of just.
So, excuse me, this was really the first time that you had ever spent much time or any time creating art, or it just started
Yeah,
happening? Wow, amazing.
I mean, I wasn't like I wasn't sort of terrible at art. I wasn't one of those people who thought, oh, I suck at this. It wasn't something that I had really gotten into. I was very much of a sort of a verbal, more intellectual person rather than I thought of myself as an artistic person. So yeah, it was a whole new part. Um, and I don't know, I mean, I had a whole bunch of various life experiences at that point where my mother died and I had a baby and I moved back to the US and all sorts of things were happening. And I think that it just brought out a whole creative side of me. And from then on, I've basically been an artist. And I
So,
never really felt any desire to go back to either sort of business or academia.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, there seems to be another part of your journey, I would think, because your work is very much about science and medicine. And how did that come about from as you evolved into being an artist?
Yeah, none of it makes particular sense. I mean, I think everybody when they see my work, they just have this like they have a narrative in mind that I'm either a former scientist or I'm a science teacher or something like that. And no, I'm not. I mean, it just, um, again, I was doing really abstract watercolors with like lots of splashy kind of bleeding work. And when I showed that work, people would say to me that they looked like things under the microscope or that it looked like dividing cells or things like that. And so actually other people saw this in my work before I did.
Huh.
So I kind of just got really interested in what other people were seeing in my work. And I kind of took it from there, really. I mean, I thought, wow, that is amazing that I'm doing that. And I kind of kept diving deeper and deeper into it. And now, I mean, I've been doing it for years, so I have much more of an intentionality about it. I mean, I'm reading a lot about science, and I mean, I have more of a, yeah, things have gotten slightly more linear.
One of the things that, speaking of linear, it doesn't sound like you had the same experience that I had, but when I started becoming an artist, I had sort of dabbled in art and thought I wanted to major in it in college, but I did Russian studies, then went to graduate school in international relations, and then for 10 years was a Soviet affair, worked in Soviet affairs and economics. When I started, and then I decided to become an artist, I found that I was really, my approach was very rational, and it was very, I sort of had an image of what I wanted to do, and then I sort of would force the canvas to do it. And I realized eventually that I needed to access something else, something more emotional or non-linear. I mean, it seems like you were able just to go right to a whole different way of thinking, really, or approaching creating work. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's hard for me to say. Like, you know, I do think that I had an intellectual aspect, and continue to, in some of my work, especially the whole idea of repeating shapes and doing, like, especially using the watercolor within um, geometric shapes. So I'll create a geometric shape and then do something very loose and fluid inside it.
Right.
So I'm really interested in that contrast, and I'm interested in the fact that, you know, you couldn't create the same thing twice if you wanted to.
Right.
So, I mean, people have that quote that they say is from Einstein, I guess, that, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I'm like, that's actually the definition of watercolor. You know, you do the same thing over and over again, but it's different every time. So,
well, one of the things that I noted with it looks like how you present a lot of your work is almost like a morphological chart where you're
yeah, I'm gonna show you another picture here.
exactly like that. Yeah. And for those of you that may not know, morphology is a branch of science, and actually is in a lot of different disciplines like biology, astronomy, crystallography, that's basically looking at shape and form and looking for similarities or differences. And you probably might remember from grade school seeing a chart of morphological chart, say, of animals or whatever. But that is is that a conscious decision to mirror morphological charts as a way of presenting your work?
Actually, not really.
Oh.
No, I mean, I can totally see that, but no, I think it's more it's more of a kind of showing the themes and variations. And maybe I'm saying the same thing as you are, but yes, I mean, there are things that are related but different. Yeah, I mean, probably. It's not modeled on a chart. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say. But it's essentially the same idea, is like these things are interrelated, you know, the same, like yeah, or like phylogenetic trees kind of thing. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing.
No.
Um
Yeah, you don't have
so even though it's not, though, I mean, like I don't usually set out to have, I mean, it is artistic. I don't sort of set out to say these are the various stages of this or that, you know. I mean, I'm I'm interested um in evolution, so I show a lot of that too in my work. So I like, you know, showing these minute differences. um Another thing is, like, I use both ink and watercolor, and in both of these cases you can't really go back and fix
no,
things very much.
very unforgiving.
So I think that I like that intellectually with the idea of evolution, because you can't go back. You have to only go forward. You know, you can make changes, but you can't go back and fix the things that didn't work.
So does that introduce an element of well, well, just going with the flow? I mean, if you make a mark and that wasn't exactly what you intended, you figure out how to incorporate that mark into what the pattern is, or
Yeah, I mean, I think luckily, or maybe it's just that that's why I'm temperamentally suited to this medium, is that I'm pretty comfortable with my mistakes. I mean, if I were a person who really wanted everything perfect, I would definitely want to paint in oil or acrylic so I could go and fix those surfaces, but I'm just like, you know.
oh,
I love the fact that I can't tell in advance exactly what it's going to look like.
well, I can't see a mistake on anything behind you, so
Yeah, but it's full of mistakes, you know. I
uh,
mean,
so when is the work behind you, was that composed, or each one of the individual images composed with a thought to the other images it would be shown with, or is that just a body of work that you did and then started playing around with it? I mean, there's obviously the shade of blue in all of these, so I don't know if that was a conscious
yeah,
decision.
I mean, this one is a little bit more sort of, I guess, illustration-y, I would say. This is based on a work called Brainbows by some scientists who figured out ways to color individual brain cells. And it was a big kind of pioneering moment in brain imagery. And I've always just been really fascinated by that work because it's not sort of, you're not, or what they're doing is not kind of coloring the cells. They're lighting them up, basically. So it's just really fascinating to me to think that that can be done, you know, that.
No, I follow science a bit, but it really is fascinating and remarkable what is being done in science. And it's, I know that you show actually in some very interesting scientific related organizations. What's the reaction from scientists with your work? Are they, I'm assuming, probably pretty intrigued?
Well, scientists are usually very into it. Um, there's sometimes you know, you have some issues with people who insist on scientific accuracy, which I'm just like, you know, I'm not that interested in exact scientific accuracy. I'm trying to suggest things that they might want to think about, rather than just, you know, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't use my work as um, textbook illustrations.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And I've never aspired to that. But yeah, most people love seeing their work reflected in an artistic way. And also, you know, just making it or creating new ways to think about what it is that they're doing.
One of the things that I really like about your work, and it's not quite as evident in this, but there's a very interesting tension in some of your work where, again, it can be a grid like this with separate images. There's a real tension between abstract and representation. And in fact, these are not exactly abstract because they are a representation of something in real life, but you've done them in a way that thing which looks abstract actually is somewhat representational, and I find that
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay right on that line between abstraction and representation, and I go a little bit back and forth on it. Like, you know, you saw the two pieces that were behind me before. One of them was much more abstract, and one of them was much more representational. This one, again, so this is an ink painting. It's inspired by MRIs. But I mean, if you saw this on an MRI, I mean, this person is in very bad shape. So this one is much more of a metaphorical piece. It's kind of like about or this whole series that I've done with the brain scans is about memory, kind of, and about learning. So I do this. This is ink on Yupo, and
Yupo.
Yupo is it's a sheet of plastic essentially. It's polypropylene paper, so it's completely unabsorbent. So it is a water medium, so similar to watercolor in a way, but in a way it's also kind of the opposite of watercolor, because in watercolor that you get patterns on the paper through absorption, and here it doesn't absorb, so the ink is kind of running around on the surface and forming patterns from like
nice
different liquid dynamics and stuff like that, but also like as it gradually evaporates off the paper, it forms these really cool images. So so this is done in several layers. I use a mask to make the outline of the brain, and then I completely wet the paper, and I just go in with drops of ink. And I imagine this as kind of your brain receiving a sensation or a piece of information. And I leave it there for a while and let it sit. And then I wash it off, and it leaves these little ghosts, kind of like, you know, as you take in information, but you lose a lot of it.
Right.
So, and then I'm putting more information on top of that. So it's a layered process, kind of like, you know, like I said, like learning, like remembering.
Yeah, metaphor. I mean, and that's a very good example, I think, of the tension between abstract and representational in your work. Unfortunately, we're running out of time fast. Can you, I guess I was going to ask about your studio practices or work habits, and you've just told me about one of your processes, but do you say work on one series at a time, or are you working at several series, or it's all one big series that you sort of mix and match?
It's more one at a time. You know, I'll get going on something, and I'm sure, you know, it's the same for you. You know, you get into it, and yeah, I'll start making one after another. I mean, there was a while in this spring when basically I was just making painting after painting of coronavirus, because it was literally all I could think about, you know? I mean, and then gradually I started branching out a little bit and thinking about some of the bigger aspects of, you know, like living through a pandemic. But initially it was just the virus. And I mean, it's like a fascinating thing for somebody who's been painting viruses for years, that all of a sudden a virus is kind of the focal point of the world.
It's a pretty cool looking virus, I have to say, too. I mean,
it's a beauty, you know. I mean, it's a wrecking ball, but it's a cool looking thing to paint.
So you actually have painted it?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find you a. I don't know if I have a background of a virus here, but anyway.
So that's what you're currently working on then, is COVID related themes?
I'm kind of, I did that for about 2 months, and I feel like it was very heavy work. You know, I did a lot of sad stuff, and I've kind of put that to the side right now. So I'm just working on sort of various little things now. I don't have a big project. I mean, that's part of the problem that all of us artists are facing right now, is that we don't really have places to show. So it's nice to have this that we can do online. Anyway,
I have to say, one of the nice things about being an artist in a time of a pandemic is, so our normal workday is being in a room by ourselves, working without seeing anybody, and wow, this is a big change from my work habits. Not, I
mean, that's true. I mean, yeah. So. The going out and seeing art in person is what I really miss. But as far as work, I mean, yeah, it was a pretty seamless kind of thing. I just, you know, I instead of going to the art store, you just mail order everything. But
So I've got a lot more I'd like to talk to you about, but I think I'm probably at overtime significantly. But we need to continue this conversation. And are you friends with Ellen Weiss for some reason?
yeah.
Yeah.
Ellen and I do. Yep.
Yeah. So
That's where I think that's where we've met is through Ellen. So
yeah. So in any case, this has been wonderful for me to meet you and to get to know a bit about you. And congratulations on being in the MPAartfest. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
oh,
So
thank you so much.